Wir nehmen nun den Faden Act Now wieder auf, und zwar aus einer anderen Richtung. Unser nächster Gast ist Kate Sekules. Sie ist Britin, lebt in New York und sie ist eine der internationalen Mending-Expertinnen. Mending kann man etwas holprig übersetzen mit reparieren, ausbessern, aber es geht um viel mehr. Es geht um Kleidungsstücke im Kreislauf halten, es geht darum, mit ihnen zu arbeiten, sie gut zu pflegen, zu stopfen, zu flicken, all das, was da dazugehört. Kate schreibt über dieses Thema, sie unterrichtet, sie hat sehr viel dazu zu sagen. Sie ist erklärte Fast-Fashion-Gegnerin, sie ist Secondhand- und Vintage-Fan und sie ist, wie gesagt, wir haben sie genannt, die Mending Queen. Sie wird morgen einen Workshop darüber halten. Heute erzählt sie uns über die Geschichte des Mending und wird auch das ein oder andere Beispiel zeigen und das Ganze auch in den Kontext der Modeindustrie stellen. Wir freuen uns sehr auf Sie.
Hello, my name is Kate Sekules. I'm a mending historian as well as a mending author and a mending practitioner. On Instagram, I'm at Visible Mend, and there's a whole thing going on there, but we'll get to that. I would like to show you slides and talk over them. So excuse me while I share my screen. I'm very used to this. Bear with me, slideshow. Okay, so this here is the cover of my book published in September, Mend, a Refashioning Manual and Manifesto, published by Penguin. You don't need to read it because I'm going to tell you everything that you need to know right now, but it is actually what it says on the cover. It will tell you how to mend as well as why, because what the subject is today is why is everyone mad for mending and why is it so important? So I'm going to endeavor to address that. As long as I can advance my slides. Oops, I'm so sorry, we have a little technical glitch. There we go. So these are the kind of statistics you as an expert audience are aware of, but I'll tell you anyway. Every year about 80 billion new garments are made and sold, 57% discarded, global textile waste amounts to 43 million tons a year. These are figures that are very unknown, really. We all have our versions, but this is roughly the kind of the scale that we're looking at, even after COVID and not really consuming the same anymore. It's a terrible issue. This is that previous page had a very, very damaged sweater, which is now looking like this. It's a work in progress. This is the kind of thing we talk about when we talk about visible mending. The reason, I mean, you know this, of course, but it's not just an ecological issue, it's very much a worker safety and ethics issue. Below subsistence level wages, worker safety. There are campaigns going on. I can point you to lots of resources about that, but this is another enormous reason, equally important as the ecological nightmare that is fashion industry. So this is, that basically covers why we mend, although there are also emotional issues and so on, which we'll get to. But this is an example of the mending community kind of started in London. I date it to more or less this date, 2015, London Climate March, and this sweater by Bridget Harvey, Mend More, Buy Less. It's been in exhibitions. It says what you need to know. It was literally a placard on the Climate March. And it's a bit of an icon of visible mending. So it's really a new-ish community, but it's growing hugely and it should. So we're going to talk about that. But first we're going to talk about where did it come from and how long have we been mending. Now, amazingly enough, there really is no history of mending written down while I'm doing it, but I'm doing it because there hasn't been one. I was amazed to discover this, but there you go. So When did mending start? I am dating it to the first clothes, and this gentleman is Ötzi, the Iceman. He was found literally under the ice in the Ötztal region of the Alps. He's about 5,000 years old, and this is a reconstruction, obviously, of his clothing that was found with him. It is made of patches, so really the first clothes were all men's. Patchwork is a kind of mending. And so I date mending to as long as we've had clothes. As far as we know, it's 5,000 years, but it is definitely going to be more. And here's the first visible mend. It probably isn't, but it's the first one and most interesting one that I've found so far. And it belongs to, if you've heard of one ancient Egyptian, it is Tutankhamun. And this here is a kerchief found in his mending cache and embalming cache in his tomb. And he wore this probably as a child, and I should think it was passed on, but who knows? It's been very mended, and here's beautiful little darn, beautiful because it's just ordinary. Someone mended it because they needed to. That's what mending was throughout history. As you can see here, represented in art, mending was synonymous with poverty, and not just poverty, but actually all clothes, because you kept clothes going because fabric was extremely valuable. If you think about it, it had to be grown before it was spun, before it was woven, before it was made into clothes. And if you were poor, as these people were, this one is actually Rembrandt, and this is an obscure painter who painted a lot of poor people. It's genre art, we call it now. But you would keep the clothes going for as long as you could. And if you were very poor, you probably only had one set of clothes. So again, later on, this continued and continued and continued. These trousers on the right here are extraordinary because they survived. Normal, ordinary clothes really don't survive because they're literally worn to pieces. And these extremely patched and mended over decades, no doubt, workers' clothes. It's an agricultural worker in England. They were found stuffed up a chimney, so they were accidentally preserved. And they look like this. They're early 18th century workman's trousers. It's an unbelievably rare thing. And I hope that this sort of garment, if we can even find them, becomes something that museums value rather than de-accession, which is kind of what happens now. There's another piece similar, much later, and in the middle here is a 1930s French workwear pair of trousers, which are on the market currently for $1,400, which tells you something about where this is headed. It's both good and bad, but we'll think about that as we go along. And very important to the visible mender is the Japanese technique of bora and sashiko. Bora is, it looks something like this. It means scraps, and it's scraps on scraps on scraps. It's mended clothing that was kept going for decades or even generations by necessity, starting in the Meiji era from the far north of Japan, where the poverty was extreme. And these clothing pieces now look beautiful to us. And it's a very great, as I said, it's an inspiration for menders. But we must be careful we're not doing cultural appropriation, because these were done out of a necessity. And they caused great shame and were almost not preserved, which is a whole story unto itself. But anyway, we can do that style of mending. This is a piece here that's just much more vernacular. It's one that I actually own. I'm very proud of it. It's very beautiful and it's very moving. But we don't do bora now. You can do bora style with your mending, but please don't say it's bora. Sashiko stitching is the kind of stitching that is used on this, and it's also, as you probably know, it's made into beautiful patterns. It has great, all of them very symbolic and meaningful. A lot of people are doing versions of this, and it is a whole movement unto itself, but worth knowing if you're going to be mending. We are now, instead of using indigo dyed clothing and small stitching, we're producing pre-distressed jeans, which is an abomination. I mean, this is sort of fading out a little bit, I think, but you're very aware of this. I know you've all seen this. We probably bought them it's a good look in a way, but it is a terrible thing for the environment, and it's a terrible thing for the people producing them. It's a $50 billion industry, the denim industry, and it is not sustainable, to say the least. What's been happening lately, these are examples of Boris Ashiko's style modern men's, and denim mending is a thing unto itself. As I said, you can search it on Instagram. It's very inspirational and beautiful, and you'll soon catch up with what's going on. I want you to remember these ones on the left. This is a company. This is not an individual. The others are by individuals. This one is Dussault Apparel, Trash Denim, the whites. I don't know why I'm sort of advertising them, but I just want you to guess how much those are retailing for. Maybe they've already been sold. It's a one-off pair, but I'll tell you at the end what the price is. So remember that picture. High fashion has been kind of in love with this look of embellishment and trashing and I don't know if the words just gone out of my head. There have been some great examples of designers who've been inspired by this for some decades now. Martin Margiela, Junya Watanabe, Rei Kawakubo, Alexander McQueen. These are things you've seen if you're interested in fashion. It's inspirational, and at this point it was when fashion was still, you know, the high haute fashion side was still very creative. This has kind of changed. It's changing because money has taken over. Now we have, I'm interested in what's happening now. We have, you know, Alessandro Michele and Gucci, the most successful designer really of recent years, maybe on the wane a little bit now. But here's the collection from 2018. So much embellishmenting, I call it. So much inspiration of the kind of thing that inspires visible menders today. On the right, we have Greg Lauren, nephew of Ralph Lauren, who's been inspired by vintage forever. And Greg Lauren's taking that further and using actual vintage pieces to mend visibly and then retail for great large prices like this. It's something that's it's interesting. Let's just leave it at that for now. It's what's going on now. Partly inspired by the visible menders. So now we're getting to visible mending and what is happening around now. You will have heard of it now. I would say maybe 3 years ago, you may not have. And even a year ago, it was looking a little bit fresh and new. Now it's a growing trend. And when there's a trend, there's a worry that the trend is going to end. So I am in the, I'm interested in there being so many styles of mending, of visible mending, as many as there are styles of design, because it's really a form of design. When you mend, you're a co-designer. You're not just repairing as in the past. It's a whole different thing. So this is one of my, I'm wearing one now. I don't know if you can see the little picture. Sort of random smocking. I call it mending from being boring. This was an old shirt of my husband's that I randomly stitched over to make it wearable. But mostly we mend for repairing damage. But nowadays you do it obviously as a sort of badge of honor to say that you've saved this from landfill. You're saying it without words. You're getting out, you're not participating in what I call the fashion industrial complex. And here's one, I've named them all. In my book, I have charts and all that, but I've named these kinds of men's. I call this the painty pant. You see over here, this was paint splattered, but they'd sort of faded and they were not interesting splatters. So I stitched over them very meticulously in lots of colors. Randomly, I'm bringing these up one by one as they appear. This is a Greasy Tee. It's a similar sort of thing to the painty pant, but this is when I spatter my fronts with, you know, I'd spill things down my front. I do that a lot. And this was the first one I ever did. I thought I'd outline this grease stain that I couldn't remove. Instead of trying to remove it, I would outline it. So it's like a little map of a stain. And here's the next one I did. As you see, it got re-spattered after I'd started outlining. And now it looks like this. So, you know, you can do extreme mends. It's not, we think that things have to be trashed after they've reached a certain point of terrible damage, but this isn't necessarily the case. This got eaten by a mouse. It was left out by accident in a country house, and this is what happened. It's an absolutely beautiful, very high quality, soft cashmere sweater, and I'm not going to give up on that. I'm going to mend it. So this I did with a sort of endoskeleton of another trashed soft cashmere scarf, and I call this technique underpatching, as it sounds. Patches underneath it, and then you stitch around. So here's another fairly extreme example of a skirt I rescued from a derelict house. This a family had been living there with 12 children over a few, well, decades at least, and it was abandoned in the 40s. I found this dress, washed it a lot, and appliqued it with other fabric I found in that pile, and stitched around the collar that couldn't be properly cleaned, so I went over it instead. So creative mending, when you think something is beyond repair, it's my favorite thing. But you can be much more minimal than that. This is something I did early on. I call it porthole. Under here, the holes still exist. They are not repaired, but they're stitched around with eyelet stitch. It's an attractive effect, and it's actually really easy and fast. So that's something, a good one to start with if you've never done visible mending before. Patchico, we're going to have a little tutorial in that at the end of my mending surgery on Saturday, tomorrow. And it's, well, today, if you're seeing this on Saturday. It's very easy. It's the easiest and most versatile of mends that combines a couple of techniques. This is a kind of fancy version that I did with 1940s, actually 1930s Devore velvet dress collar, and on some pant hems that had gone frayed because I stepped on the back of them. And darning. So darning is the number one technique probably of visible mending, of any mending, and throughout history. So now we do it so that it shows up. Darning, it can be a little daunting at first to start, but it's easier than you think, and it's extremely fulfilling. That's all I'm going to say for now. And embellishment, again, like I said, I've named all the mends. Embellishment is what it sounds like. It's an embellishment that is a mend. So here we have an underpatch combined with some stitching. I sort of echoed the pattern of this printed on the t-shirt in embroidery. And I find that amusing. Amusingness. There's no reason why clothes have to be deadly serious, and there's no reason why mending has to be deadly serious. So this is something I did on this old underground t-shirt, and it had this hole conveniently sighted under the arm. So I did an underpatch and this self-explanatory state mend underarm, underground, see. And here, a selfie patch, trying to make the same face as I made in that. Self-explanatory. Again, it's silly. I like some silliness. I think we take clothes in a way too seriously. I mean, we should take clothes seriously, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't have fun with them. And I think that was something that was missing in fashion in the last few years, when it's just become this overwhelming industry that is all about money and the bottom line. It's very distressing and sad. So here, more dons. Let's move on. Visible mending on Instagram. The hashtag was really started by this gentleman, Tom of Holland. Look him up. He's extraordinary and very inspirational, menspirational. And he started the hashtag, and it was, I don't know, 2013, 14. It's growing now. These are all from a few years ago, probably 3 or 4 years ago. And people are doing really exciting, fun, interesting, varied work. Here's some more recent ones. These are from last year. And, I really recommend you start with hashtag visible mending and follow your nose. You'll find such inspiring people to get you going, to make your own creative juices flow. And here's one of mine. I'm nearly finished with this little presentation, but this is a statement. The opposite of hate is mending. I think that is very true, and you cannot mend spitefully. You can't do it with a bad thought. If you have bad thoughts in your head, and something I call meditation, if you start mending, you will find you are calming down. It, I'm sure, has physiological effects. You are doing something very good, not only for your garment and for the planet, but for your own state of mind. It's kept a lot of us going through COVID. It's kept us sane. There's been connection going on really through Instagram, but in the normal world, we can mend in mending groups, and these have been growing. There's some, start one in your area or join one. It's a wonderful thing to do to mend in groups, and it's a wonderful thing to do to mend on your own. Again, I call it meditation. I forget what my next, that's it. That's all I've got for you today in the slides. Thank you. That's my email if you want to email me. And that's, as I said, Instagram, which I really hope you will join. I'm going to stop sharing now. And I'm going to say, I think I've said everything that I meant to say with the slides, but just if you want to start mending and you haven't, I'm going to just encourage you. I'm all about, there are several great teachers, and more teachers are happening every day. People are starting to share their enthusiasm on, in the usual channels and in very varied ways. So you can always find help for the techniques, but I'm, as well as teaching techniques, very interested in teaching just enthusiasm and enabling you to just start. If you're daunted by going in and cutting clothes, and it's hard to do sometimes. You want to cut clothes up for patches or to use, or because you need to increase the width of a hole in order to make a more beautiful patch. These things are daunting because we're taught that clothes are untouchable. There's something like, an iPhone or a car. You must leave it to the professionals. But I want you to just go in, start cutting, start appending things to your clothes, start messing with them. They belong to you. If you have something that's that needs mending, you're either going to throw it out or you can just mess with it. It hasn't got anywhere to go but get better and be wearable again. And we are very attached to the clothes in our closets. The old things that you keep going are often the ones that you love the most. If you start mending, you've made something even more unique. It was already your favorite thing. That's why it got so worn in the first place. If you add a mend to it, try it. You're going to find that you then love it all the more. And then if you add another mend on top of that, it just keeps going. This is personalizing the closet in a 21st century way. This is what we need to do, and this is what we need to spread. We all need to get this mending bug, the mending virus, sorry. It's the future. It goes along with a whole lot of ways of community dressing that are happening. There are all the selling your old clothes, the flipping the clothes. You can make a living at that even nowadays. But there's rental platforms, there are buy-sell trade places. All of these go together in a new world of fashion that is so much more exciting than the one we've got at the moment. So I am just here to say, why is mending so important? Why is everyone mad for it? Because it's exciting, it's fun, it's creative, it's easy, it's cheap, it saves your sanity, it's meditation, and it is the way fashion needs to go in the future. So that's my message for the day. Start mending. Thank you for listening.
Wenn ihr das, was Kate Sekules erzählt hat, nachlesen möchtet, könnt ihr das in diesem Buch tun. Mend, a Refashioning Manual and Manifesto. Das heißt, es geht bei Kate immer darum, dass das Style ist, also Mode auf ganz individuelle Art, aber auch politisches Statement. Ihr könnt in diesem Buch alles lernen, um das praktisch auszuprobieren, aber es gibt eine noch bessere Möglichkeit, denn morgen um 16 Uhr wird Kate für uns einen Workshop halten, wo sie uns zeigt, wie das praktisch geht, wo sie aber auch all unsere Fragen beantworten wird, also ganz praktisch. Wie kann ich dieses Loch stopfen? Was mache ich mit dem Riss in meiner Hose? Oder da ist ein Fettfleck, der nicht herausgeht. Wie kann ich den am besten bearbeiten? Das wird sie uns zeigen. Wenn ihr euch noch nicht angemeldet habt, könnt ihr das immer noch tun. Und zwar auf workshop@greenstyle-muck.com. Alle Infos zum Workshop und auch ein Porträt über Kate findet ihr auf der Greenstyle-Website. Ich bin schon sehr gespannt, Mimi.
Wir machen mit.
Wir sind natürlich mit dabei.
Wir haben schon viele Löcher gesucht, die wir mitbringen.
Ja, und auch gefunden.
Ja.